And good evening to you all today. Welcome to the Carolina Geek Podcast. My name is John Thomas Hill. In keeping with my New Year's resolution, I am doing a column of the week. You can find that on medium.com, or column of the day. You can find it on medium.com/Jason Bond Show, or just look up Jason Bond Show. That's my old college radio DJ name from way back in the day. I'm posting a blog a day or some kind of writing a day. I'm working on writing a day. I'm doing a podcast today. And I'm watching something on one of the streaming services I'm subscribed to a day as my New Year's resolution. So, in keeping with that second one, I am doing this podcast on Sci-Fi Channel. And during my perusing of Facebook earlier today, I noticed that there was a show, and I can't remember which one, it was right offhand, that said something, this was the last best hope for sci-fi, some kind of a show. I can't even remember what the name of it was. I think it was the Alan Tudyk show, the Resident Alien. I hate to break it to the person that wrote that. The ship has sailed. Sci-Fi Channel has pretty much long since alienated sci-fi fans. And this is before The Expanse. It's been a long time. It started back almost 30 years ago now. I think it was 92 or 93 when the Sci-Fi Channel came on. We didn't get it until probably the late 90s on our local rural cable station, cable outlet. And it was pretty cool. It would run the old Star Trek. It would run other legendary sci-fi shows and show legendary sci-fi movies and also the B-movie stuff and all that. And it was what you would expect out of a sci-fi channel. It showed sci-fi. However, and this is something I've noticed in the last 20 some odd years, 20 to 30 years on cable channels that were originally supposed to have a mission, instead of adhering to their mission in order to bring about the largest possible audience, they have more than happily strayed away from that in order to attract the greatest audience by catering to the lowest common denominator. And sci-fi is no different. There is a wealth of sci-fi fiction out there that could easily be put into television form or movie form. And I'm talking a ton of it. Stuff from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, what have you, even earlier than that. And I'm not just talking about the big guns like Asimov and Clarke and others, but stuff you'd see in the sci-fi literature magazines, and there's so many to name. It really is disappointing because it had such promise. This is the channel that picked up Stargate SG-1 after Showtime gave up on it. They gave us Farscape. They gave us the new Battlestar Galactica, which in my opinion eclipsed the old one by a long shot. It gave us Babylon 5 reruns for a while there when the show was nearly forgotten after WB decided they didn't want anybody to profit from it, much less themselves, because of internal politics. What is sad is that they took a channel that had great expectations. And there's already a horror channel out there. I don't remember what the name of it is. I mean, it may just simply be the horror channel. I'm not a horror fan, but it's out there somewhere. So there is a horror channel, but unfortunately, on Sci-Fi Channel, now known as SyFy, Michael Hinman, if you've listened to this podcast, you probably know all too well about that story. I'll let him explain it one of these days, or you can go Google it for your own sake. He used to do a podcast and newsletter called Sci-Fi Portal. Well, guess who paid him some money to pick up that name? NBC Universal. Yep, true story. He probably is legally obligated not to reveal how much, or probably how little, they gave him. as the case may be. I have no idea. But what they have done is they have taken a great idea that could have been a very, very good channel that could have brought in a large audience anyway. And they've whittled it down. And yeah, I don't remember they had wrestling for a while there. They had ECW on SyFy, and then they had SmackDown on SyFy. I could forgive that. I'm a wrestling fan. I could forgive that. Then they brought in horror films, which a little bit would be fine. But then they brought in the really cheesy stuff. Shall we even get into Sharknado and the other stuff before and since? There is so much great material out there. And there's so many people that have great stories. And you bring us garbage like Sharknado? Who cares about Sharknado? It's far from realistic. Oh, it's escapist crap. It's garbage. If you like it, that's fine. But to me, someone who grew up in it, who's seen how influential, I'm not talking about Star Trek and Star Wars, to be honest with you. I'm not a huge fan of either one of them. I like them well enough. I enjoy them. But I'm not passionate about it. There's so much great stuff out there that could be made into great sci-fi material. But Sci-Fi, for some reason, thinks that it's above their audience. And much like the Discovery Channel is not about science anymore, the Learning Channel is not much about learning anymore, History Channel is not so much about history anymore, and Arts and Entertainment is not so much about arts and entertainment anymore. It is all about trying to get a big audience, and the cheapest way you can do that is reality shows. And I understand their appeal, but to be perfectly frank, I don't like them. It's cheap TV. I know why they make them. It's to fit in the budget. I don't have a problem if there were a few of them and you had a lot more dramas and maybe a few comedies and such to go along with it. But unfortunately, what began 20 some odd years ago, or probably more likely 30 years ago with the real world, has grown into a cancer on television, which is the reality TV genre. And yes, I've used the word cancer. I think it is. Thankfully, we live in times where we have streaming services that can give you good quality television programs, not just sci-fi. You've got Amazon Prime, you've got Hulu, you've got Netflix and whatnot, and Apple TV, and now Disney Plus is in it. Now you've got other channels as well, Peacock from NBC. You've got CBS All Access, of course, which has the Star Trek library, including the new series Discovery and Picard. Sci-Fi could have been tremendous. It had plenty of chances to redeem itself, but it abandoned Galactica way too soon. It canceled The Expanse way too soon. Plenty of other shows way too soon. It could have picked up Babylon 5 if it really wanted to, but it could have picked up Firefly. It could have picked up other shows potentially. Now granted, those were long shots to begin with, and Warner Brothers and Fox were not necessarily wanting other networks to get their hands on shows that could potentially be far more profitable in the hands of others than they are. That's one of the reasons you don't see anything from Babylon 5 anymore, because Warner Brothers doesn't want to do anything with it, and more importantly, they don't want anybody else to do anything with it, because they don't want to be made to look like fools. What bugs me the most is that there's this great geek culture that has become so prevalent and passionate right now. It's an incredible, incredible, incredible time in the life of people who embrace geek culture and all that. Superhero movies are mainstream. Used to be Marvel and DC were a debate you would have in some comic shop somewhere, or comic showcase place in a sci-fi convention or whatnot, and it would be not really relevant. Now it's almost as fierce as political debates these days, and in some cases maybe even more, and that's saying something. What I'm really getting at is this. Sci-Fi Channel needs to die. It has lived out its existence. It is a sad shadow of its former self. And to call it SyFy is, to be perfectly frank, like defecating on the graves of the great sci-fi writers and all that. Because what you've basically done is you've taken a great idea, and in the course of maximizing profits and minimizing expenses, you've ruined a great idea just for another throwaway cable network that most people don't even bother to watch. I turned 50 this year. I've been at a cable since my mom got it in 1986. January of 86. Actually, this is the 35th year. I think the 35th anniversary is 2 weeks away. It's the middle of January. I can't remember the exact date. It was on a Saturday we got it. And I remember when cable was really cool. You had the Discovery Channel, which had cool science shows and wildlife shows and whatnot. And to a degree, they still have them. The Learning Channel had stuff you could actually learn stuff from. Not right now, where most of it is say yes to the dress and really lame other reality stuff. Some of it which is quite honestly offensive to anybody that would have any kind of intelligence, in my opinion, but I will admit being a bit of a snob about stuff like that. Arts and entertainment was very cool because they had very cool movies, very cool programs. And I'm not the most sophisticated person in the world, but I do like a bit of sophistication. And they had foreign movies. They had movies that you normally wouldn't see anywhere else. Now we get Duck Dynasty. And whatever else. They've got the Live PD and other shows. Do they even do dramas anymore? They used to have Night at the Improv, which is their stand-up comedy show. That was great stuff. I don't even have that anymore. What is sad is that these networks should have continued on, but because of pressures from stockholders to present dividends and all of that, and to put ratings out there, the initial mission statements of these networks have been tossed into the waste paper basket of history. And now it's all about getting numbers. And if you can get numbers by having some pseudo-rednecks act like rednecks who aren't really rednecks, yeah, the folks at Duck Dynasty are phonies. Go do your research on Google and whatnot. You'll find out the hard truth. The Robertson family isn't what you think they are. And of course, the Kardashian plague upon us as a culture. Thank you, Rob Kardashian, for the fact that you had a brief encounter with a friend of O.J. Simpson. Now we are forever cursed by your daughters, who have about as much relevance as algae. Oh, I'm being maybe a little too harsh, but considering the fact that I could be a lot more cruel, but I'm not going to be. I'm really tired of the vast wasteland of television these days. That is a phrase that came 10 years before my birth. The FCC chairman, whose name escapes me, I remember this in college, called it television a vast wasteland. And it not only has lived up to that, has exceeded that today. Bruce Springsteen once used to sing a song, something like 57 channels and nothing on. Well, there's now thousands of channels and nothing on. Nothing but infomercials and reality garbage and commentary shows that portray themselves as news shows. And every once in a while you get a really good show that more often than not gets strangled because they want to hit numbers. You have to hit this audience. You have to hit this demographic. You have to appeal to this group. Thank God for streaming services, because now we can actually get some shows that are actually pretty good. There's still a lot of garbage. There are shows that get cut down way too quickly. But the truth is that there is good stuff out there. If you may have to find it. You may have to search for it. You may have to go through a few series and give up on them to find good stuff. Sci-fi, in conclusion, was a dream given form almost 30 years ago. That unlike Babylon 5, it failed to meet the expectations of its audience. Because the people that owned it wanted to get a much larger audience that in reality are as casual as someone going by a hot dog stand on the streets of New York, and once a week or two, maybe they'll buy a hot dog from that place, and the hot dog's not that particularly good. Meanwhile, just down the block, there's a really good hot dog stand that makes really good hot dogs or really good Franks or Wieners or whatever you want to call them, and has great condiments, and it's only a little bit more expensive. But yet, because of convenience, because of the cost, you get what you pay for. And that's what we're seeing in basic cable. That's what we're seeing in, even to a certain extent, in premium cable. And we've seen that in broadcast networks for nearly 20 years now, if not longer. Well, that is my little diatribe tonight. Let me talk to you about what you may see in the future. I've been talking about this for a long time. I really need to get to this. But part of my New Year's resolution is to watch stuff. And I plan on in the near future, probably as soon as Wednesday, to actually do watch-alongs, which is basically watching a show while I'm commentating on that show. So hopefully on Wednesday I'll be able to do one. But, yeah. This is part of my New Year's resolution, to try and make myself a better person. Because last year I was miserable as all get out. And I'd like to have some fun and enjoyment during this year, when we've had probably the worst experience in human history in my lifetime. And I remember the dark days of the late 70s and how tense it was at times in the 80s with the prospect of nuclear war and all that. This is far worse. I don't think it's been as bad since the Civil War. So, anyhow, I wanted to wrap it up like that. I know it's kind of depressing, but I will say this much right now. Things should get better, hopefully. Lord willing. And let's focus on the good stuff as much as we can, because there's plenty of bad stuff out there. We need to focus on the good stuff when we can. Anyhow, I'm going to leave you for now. Good night, good luck, may the good news be yours.